By the time I graduated from college, I'd had my fair share of challenging experiences. And had I survived them? Yes. But what I didn't understand was that I was living in survival mode and that would become a subconscious program that would continue to cause me to put myself in situations that would bring me even more challenges. I didn't know that inner work needed to be done, let alone what that even might look like. And then to add to the heaviness of all of it, my family suffered a huge blow when my brother was arrested and wrongfully convicted for a crime he had nothing to do with. So not only was I dealing with my internal struggles, now I felt like I had this huge hole in my heart. In 1999, halfway through my freshman year at Bates, my brother David was brought in for questioning by two corrupt detectives with the Chicago Police Department. His trial was held a couple of years later, and he was found guilty of accessory to murder and sentenced 40 years to life in prison. The detectives, they falsified evidence of an alleged verbal confession after trying to beat one out of him for hours on end. It'd be 25 years before he got his freedom back. The night I found out about his conviction, I was just about to make my big debut performance at the coffee shop on campus. That moment was when I really started mastering suppressing my feelings and mastering compartmentalizing pain. My brother was the closest person to me in my life. And the thought of him being in that place, like, was he going to get hurt? Was he going to be okay? Like, I was so scared for him, not just physically, but the mental torment of having your life ripped away from you for something that you didn't even do. Gosh, he had a 2-month-old daughter, a 2-year-old son, and a teenage daughter that he wasn't going to be able to experience growing up because of all of this. Every time I thought about it, I got sick to my stomach. Being all the way in Maine, it helped just like a little bit because, I didn't have to experience my mother and my grandmother's pain along with my own, which was already just too much to handle. I did not have the tools to even process what life was about to be like without my brother home. And so I drank a little more and I smoked a lot of more cigarettes and more weed because it all seemed to numb it enough to not make me sick when I thought about it. Of course, it was like putting a moldy band-aid on a gaping wound. I just didn't know how to handle it all. And it's what we watched everybody do when we were growing up. We watched them drink and smoke their stresses away without understanding the damage that they were doing and causing their bodies and themselves as a result. My grandmother died of complications of emphysema with cirrhosis of the liver. And my mother just recently died of lung cancer. But the programs that we run, they're unconscious behaviors, meaning we're not even aware that they even exist. Drinking was a learned behavior. And quite frankly, I had nothing at all in my back pocket to pull out and help me deal with all of this shit. So moving back home after graduation, it was something that I was not looking forward to doing. But I didn't have a choice. Where else was I going to go? Home was home, I got a job at Northwestern University working with my mother. And, I just tried to find a new sense of normal not having David around. About a month later, I was convinced to meet up with an ex I'd briefly had a fling with the summer before because this guy knew who my brother was. And at this point, I was not only looking for love in all of the wrong places 2.0, I was also desperate to connect with my brother in any way I could, even if it meant being around people who knew him. So I agree to go out with this guy, and He stands me up. But his charmingly handsome friend and former roommate just happened to be there that night. And not only did his friend also know my brother, but his brothers were actually friends with David. So, I concocted in my mind that this guy felt like home. And a few hookups later, I was pregnant. Just 2 months fresh out of college. And I was keeping this one. I didn't really know him, but after everything I'd gone through, nothing was going to keep me from having this baby. And then after just a few short months, it was clear that things were not meshing with us. Something inside of him seemed distant, like broken or disconnected. But honestly, with all the things I had going on, so was I in a lot of ways. My beautiful baby girl, Kaylee Celeste, was born the summer of 2004. And this little one was going to be the catalyst to keep me going, because darker times loomed ahead. My mother was angry about my pregnancy. Thank God I had my grandmother's support. I was living with my grandma at the time because at one point when I was 16, my mother signed over guardianship to her so she could move to Hawaii and get married. Well, ultimately that didn't work out for her. So there was a time when my mother's past traumas had overflowed onto my brother and I, and her drinking and anger caused us to not have the strongest relationship. So even though I'd exceeded all of her expectations, I had a baby and she was disappointed. My grandmother, on the other hand, was thrilled that I'd graduated from college and I had a job and my own car. My grandma, she got pregnant with my mom at 14. So in her eyes, I was #winning. And damn it if I didn't need something to celebrate at that point. The beautiful thing about this divine universe that we live in is that even though I was ill-equipped to handle the layers of emotions and self-esteem I'd been dealing with and suppressing for so long, the timing of my daughter's birth was perfect. Even with the challenges that life kept throwing at me, it was just right. The timing was just right. Because becoming a parent gave me the exact right amount of focus I needed for at least that first year and a half of her life to keep me from self-destruct mode. And it was hard, but it was time. I was old enough to put my big girl panties on, and I quit smoking. I did prenatal yoga. I ate well. I was taking care of my body so that I could breastfeed. And also looking into that little girl's eyes and the love that I felt for her, it did take away the sting a little bit as I continued to try to get adjusted to the new normal in my brother's absence. I'm blaming the afterbirth hormones for the fact that a song came on that reminded me of her father, and it led me straight back to him. I started thinking about wanting to give my daughter a family and have her grow up with her dad in the home because I didn't get that. Forget about the fact that we both needed to do a lot of healing, and I had just forgotten how ridiculous he seemed to me during those first few months of pregnancy. I was clouded by those silly little hormones, and 5 weeks after she was born, I called him up. And he met her for the first time. And the next chapter of my life was about to go down. And if I thought shit was hard before, I was in for a rude awakening.